Hi, I'm Ms. Nickerson.
I'm Mr. Radford.
Welcome to Cellular Reproduction. I call this cell sex in my class, but it's not quite as exciting as it sounds.
Yeah.
We're going to be going over mitosis today, and then in your next set of notes, we're going to go over meiosis. So why does a cell divide? Why do we even care if they divide?
Well, sometimes growth and repair. I mean, things break down and we need new cells. So that's one big part of it.
You guys started out as just a single cell, and so now you're, billions, almost infinite number of cells.
Yeah.
You had to get to that stage, and now you have to maintain it. Yeah. So most cells spend a good part of their life growing, and that phase is called interphase. We're going to look at the different phases that cells go through in their life cycle, but vast majority of it they spend in interphase. We're actually not going to focus on that one because it's kind of boring. They just grow. We're going to focus on the ones that are changing as they're making copies of themselves. So let's talk about what actually divides when a cell makes a copy of itself.
So we have the DNA needs to replicate. We have chromosomes that are inside of your nucleus, and basically all the organelles that we've learned about, they have to kind of get on one side, and some of them do divide as well.
I do. Mitochondria is one of them. Okay, yeah. So a chromosome, I heard you talk about, well, what's a chromosome? I think a chromosome is tight coils of DNA. So we're looking at this picture here of some real chromosomes. They kind of look like X's. I draw them like X's a lot in class. But if you were to zoom in on these, you would actually see that they're DNA that's been coiled up so tightly that they just looks like this bundle.
Yep. And we've always looked at things as two-dimensional on paper with our projects, drawing them, and all of the organelles and the parts are three-dimensional. So that's an awesome picture right there.
And the chromosomes can kind of come in a little bit different shapes and sizes and lengths, and the X's can be not the same size and everything else. Here's an example of a male and female chromosome, the X and the Y chromosome. So this is a male that we're looking at here, if they have both X and Y. And once they duplicate themselves, we call them chromatids. So it's kind of another play on the word. If you hear chromosome, it's the whole thing, and making copies of themselves, chromatids. Okay. So we also have another name for them. Before they duplicate, and there's only one set of chromosomes, that's called haploid. And then once they make a copy of themselves, it's called diploid. And so you can tell a lot about an organism, whether they reproduce, which stage they're in, or whether the haploid stage or diploid stage. And there's usually a question on haploid or diploid on the state test. That's why we go over and make sure you understand haploid like half. Diploid, like die, like two.
Die means two, yep.
So you can kind of
prefix,
kind of figure it out. So what exactly is happening when this chromosome duplicates?
Well, basically, I mean, everything just copies itself. We have the sister. There's a parental chromosome, and then it will split off into having two. And those are the sister chromatids after that happens. So
and they're exactly like the parent, right?
Exactly.
And that's why when you have a heart cell, it makes another heart cell. You'd be in trouble if your heart cell turned into an eyeball cell. Yeah. Didn't know how to do its job. So it's going to make an exact copy of that DNA, and then it's held together with a little tiny kind of junction point called the centromere, and it's right in the center of those two sister or chromatids. All right, so every species has a specific number of chromosomes. People, we have 23 pairs or 46 total. And here's a picture of the human karyotype. And they've kind of color-coded it to signify different parts of it and stuff. But not all animals have that amount. In fact, every animal basically kind of has different amounts. Or even if they're the same as us, they're different. Does the number of chromosomes that something have tell us anything about it?
Not really. I mean, we think, mosquitoes, if you see there, it has 6. Well, mosquitoes really aren't that complex. They can't, sing or do some of the things that we can do. But, hey, can we fly?
No, it's a call. There's plenty of plants, including a lot of ferns, that have over 1,000 chromosomes. So the number really doesn't tell us anything about it. And it's really what's written in those chromosomes that makes us us. So we got cell division. We talked about mother cells, daughter cells. A lot of stuff in cell division has female names. And that's because we kind of associate regeneration and growth and new life with women. And so there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes along, has female names for it. The first step of mitosis is interphase. We talked about how that's growing. The cell just grows and grows and grows and just kind of sits there.
And I think 95% of a cell's life is in interphase.
Doing its job.
And so we're going to do a lab later, and we'll see
how many of them are there.
How many are in these phases. So. Yeah.
Now, when it gets ready to replicate, it goes through a series of other phases also. I'll tell you a story in class on how to remember these, or maybe you can come up with your own story on how to remember them.
Shop orders are in. If you need that for this morning, they're here in the front office.
All right, good to know. So in mitosis, which is making an exact copy of itself, so 100% of the DNA, making another cell with 100% of the DNA, there's lots of different ways that this asexual reproduction can occur. What's binary fission?
That's basically where the single organisms just kind of break apart.
They like rip themselves
all of a sudden,
in half.
whoop, there's a new one. Yeah.
A lot of old bacteria and stuff. They can just make a copy of themselves, and boom, you have a whole bacteria there. They didn't have to do anything exciting, no dating, nothing. They just got it done. We got budding. Yeast will do that. It'll have a little bud break
growing
off of it. Yep. There's lots of different types. Regeneration. Some animals can regenerate their own cells. And so there's lots of different types. We're really just going to focus on how cells make copies of themselves.
Yeah.
So the next phase is prophase. In prophase, all that DNA that is usually like just kind of loose thread coils up into those tight strands, and the centrioles, which we learned about when we talked about cell organelles, start to move towards the poles, or like the north-south of the cell, and it starts to kind of reach out with these spindles or kind of ropes, and it's getting ready to do a serious tug-of-war game on this cell.
Yeah, so in prophase you can start to see the chromosomes.
Yeah, they'll show up in the
And one other thing, asexual reproduction. Asexual means we don't need a partner. Yeah. So it's self-replication. So that's another.
All the cells in your body are asexual cells except for your sex cells, sperm and eggs.
Yep.
All right, so next is metaphase. I remember metaphase because they land up in the middle.
Meet in the middle. Yep.
So we see these chromosomes lined up along what I call the equator or the middle, and the spindles are reaching down to play tug-of-war and getting ready to be pulled by those centromeres.
Do we want them to draw these as they're in their notes?
That's a good question. If you'd like to draw them, you can. We're also going to do some drawings in class.
Please come to the attendance office, and we're Spain to the attendance office.
What's next?
So anaphase. So those spindle fibers start to take one of those chromosomes that and starts to pull them towards the sides. Okay, so that chromatid kind of starts to break apart, and then they start to move towards the poles.
And I remember anaphase is in apart. Anaphase is apart. They both start with A, and they're getting yanked hard.
Yeah.
Okay, telophase, they've moved to the opposites end of the poles, and the cell goes, all right, I've got my own copy of DNA. I'm going to start pinching this off so that I can now become two complete cells. So we see the cell starting to have its cell membrane reformed. The nuclear membrane starts to reform, and we see that DNA start to kind of unwind back out again and kind of disappear. And what's cytokinesis?
Cytokinesis, that's when they're gone. They separate into the two new daughter cells that are identical to the original cell. So
it divides up the cytoplasm too.
Yep.
Make sure they end up the same size. You don't want one like a little tiny cell and one gigantic, so they got to equalize it out. And we see this in plant and animal cells. It's not like it's just in one type of thing. So on the left there you see an animal cell, and on the right there you see a plant cell, so it gets the cell walls going with it. So if you know those phases, you should be able to look at some pictures or some lab slides and tell us what phases slides are in. So as I look at these, I can decide, is this an interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. So take a second, maybe pause the video and see if you can identify these. Good job identifying them. So now you're looking at a slide that we're going to see in the microscope. This is an onion root tip, where a lot of mitosis is going on because roots like to dig deep.
That's where it's growing, yep.
So we're going to be looking in the microscope, and again, we're going to be identifying cells. And this picture clearly has cells in all of the different phases of mitosis. So again, kind of take a look and see if you can find a cell in each of the different phases. Interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. Because we're going to be looking for those in class, so that's a good idea to do. All right. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for joining us for the Viking Science Academy. We'll see you in class to do a couple labs on this and to learn more about cell sex.